I want to bring in House Majority Leader Congressman Kevin McCarthy right now. Good to see you, Congressman. Thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, and I hope you're staying warm.
Yes, we're staying warm, but it is snowing pretty aggressively here in New York. So let me get your take on this idea that 24 million Americans lose coverage, recognizing, of course, that that's also by choice, because as part of the plan, you're doing away with those mandates that forced people to take on health insurance or pay a fee. So part of it is by choice, but nonetheless, 24 million Americans not insured by 2026.
Well, you first have to remember, too, this is CBO scoring phase one of 3 phases for the overall replacement. Because remember, we don't get to replace exactly as we want to in this first phase because, one, you have to go through reconciliation and you have the Byrd rule. So the Senate doesn't allow us to put all the mechanism in to actually take care of some of those people who are going to be uninsured. Secondly, they take in no process of what Secretary Price, the powers that he has, more than 1,400 in the AHCA, to improve and stabilize the market. But you are correct. We're repealing the individual mandate, so there are people who do not want insurance, that are forced to have insurance, that will choose not to have it. But think of this. I'm actually very encouraged by the CBO report. One, it lowers the premiums, the biggest concern people have out there. Secondly, that it lowers the deficit. And when you look at the small business confidence just booming, that's because it takes away more than $800 billion of tax burden on them. So I'm encouraged by this because this is only phase one of our 3 phases. People are going to have more choice. Price is going to be lower. At the end of the day, more people are going to be encouraged to be able to have health care and the health care that they choose to have.
Rand Paul, obviously, with his own plan, has said over the last week or so that it is an expansion of Medicaid. Is it more important, Congressman, to look at the fact that over the near term, your plan allows more people to join Medicaid, or is it more important to take a look at the fact that there's ultimately going to be a cap on Medicaid, which actually contains it? Well,
Medicaid cannot sustain itself. The expansion of Medicaid right now, if you look in just the 10-year window, will cost us $1 trillion in the 10th year. That's how much we spend on the entire discretionary budget, from the military to the CIA to the Department of Agriculture. So it can't sustain itself. So if you don't do something about it, and this is what we do in our plan, we actually give states flexibility. I had 18 governors in, bipartisan, Republican and Democrat, and the number one thing they requested, give me flexibility in my state and I can manage the Medicaid. It doesn't have to be able for the federal government to pay 90% of it. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're finding a better way to give health care. People have more choice and they're going to lower the premiums.
What do you think the CBO report misses in terms of its assessments of this plan?
Well, it's not the CBO's fault of what they're missing because they can only score what's in front of them. They don't get to score phase 2, all the 1,400 different points that Dr. Price has the power to do, and they can't score phase 3. Those bills that will be moving through the House right after we vote on this bill that will go to the Senate that takes 60 votes. And those type of elements combined together, I think the American people are going to be able to see a much better bill that puts them in power and at the same time lowers the price.
A lot of people are saying this morning that this is like a sausage-making process and it's going to get marked up and it's going to be a different bill before it actually does become law. Where is the give here, Congressman? How do you think this looks different in the next couple of weeks? I know you have you want to get something out by Easter, correct?
Yes, we would like to. I mean, and remember, we've gone through 2 committees already. Every Republican has voted for it. We've taken every amendment that Democrats wanted to offer. Unfortunately, the Democrats offered amendments about changing the hashtag, the name of the bill, and they spent hours on that. We'll now go through the budget, and then we'll go to the Rules Committee. But I think this is the framework of where it is. And when you look at the core of what the CBO says, does it lower premiums? Does it lower our deficit? And does it remove taxes from small business? Those are all yeses. And yes, we remove the individual mandate, and we've talked about that from the very beginning. So what we're going to see, too, though, in phase 2 and 3, to be able to make those improvements of what we're looking for. We have never hidden from that fact. It is the rules of the Senate that forces us to do this in 3 phases, and that's exactly what we're doing. I'm actually encouraged by what the CBO says because it proves that, yes, we'll lower premium.
Do you need that Cadillac tax in there? I mean, do you need to have some mechanism to raise revenue while you're also cutting out so many other taxes, of course, that we know hurt business?
No, we do not. What we need is greater choice, greater opportunity. Because remember why we're here today, Maria? Because 1/3 of every county in America only has one choice. Government took it over and says one size fits all, which we know does not work for America, and then forced people, whether they liked it or not, and would punish them if they did not buy health care. So yeah, when you look at the CBO numbers, you should be encouraged that yes, we're going to lower premiums and bring health care with more choice, more opportunity, and empower the individual to make that decision.
Congressman, I know you're going to be speaking with the president today about the health care bill. What will be the focus of your conversation? Where are the priorities when you're in front of the president about this?
Well, we continue to look at those members that we need to continue to talk to explain this bill to. As we walk through the process, we're going to be going through the budget process committee this week. Unfortunately, Congress, because of the snowstorm, is not in today. They'll come in tomorrow. And we just want to make sure everybody has all the information, touch base again one more time, and continue to move forward.
You know, the stakes are so high at this point, which is why everyone's focusing on your timeline, because if you don't get this done in the time frame that you'd like, then taxes become, delayed. So how do you see your timeline taking place in 2017 in terms of the real priorities on the agenda?
We're going exactly to the timeline that we laid out. Our first process was regulation reform, and look how successful we've been at that. Never before had a Congressional Review Act, only one has ever been signed into law. We've already put 3 into law and passed 14 in the House. We've now moved to health care. We've produced the bill, gone through 2 committees, and we're on track exactly where we thought we would be. Once we get done with health care, and this is what CBO says as well, it's repealing more than $800 billion worth of taxes. Well, that lowers the baseline that allows us to do and broaden tax reform. That's where we'll go next once health care is done. But you are correct. That's why it's so critical to get health care done now so we can move to tax reform and get growth coming back into America. And to me, that's the #1 thing we need. Growth in America will solve many of our problems. This idea that America settles for mediocrity, that 2% and less is the new norm, that's not where America's at. We should be 3-4% of growth. That would be a fundamental difference and a change.
What's a realistic corporate tax rate? Is it 20%, Congressman? And what's a realistic tax cut for an average American out there today? What are people who are watching really going to see when your tax reform plan gets signed into law?
Well, I think it should be 20% or lower on corporate rate. We just know if we want to compete, and we're in a competitive world, America needs to at least start on the same starting line as the other countries. And the other part, the tax reform should be, especially for every American, it should be fair. They should be able to fill it out on a postcard. You don't need 7 different brackets of rates. That should be 3. And people should be able to understand what are they having with their money that's fair, that somebody across the aisle, that they're not paying different if they're making the same amount. And I think what you'll find is that will bring growth back to America and, more importantly, jobs back to America. You watch what this president has done, and you just look at the latest report for small business confidence. They've seen a change in the White House, and now they're seeing policy changes here in Congress and the Senate, and we just need to carry through to make sure we finish the job.
So in terms of the bigger impact to the economy, and you just talked about 4% economic growth, does that come as a result of the business tax at 20%, or do you think that comes as a result of people just spending more money because they're getting to keep more of their own money?
I think it's a combination of both, and it's also a combination of creating jobs back in America. And that is the new structure within the tax reform. It focuses on building jobs in America at the same time. And that's what you'll find why growth continues to go forward.
What's as important as Obamacare and tax reform after that? Would it be an infrastructure plan?
Yeah, I think infrastructure. You need to plan to be not what America looks like in next month, but what should America look like in the next 100 years? And are we building the foundation for it? So that goes beyond just roads and bridges. Do we have the most current FAA process of how to fly planes around and security going? Are we making sure America is actually wired, that we have the internet everywhere? There are a lot of things we should be looking at to building on what the greatness of the last generations have been and setting up that America America is leading the world for the next century as well.
Yeah, Congressman, you make a lot of good points in terms of innovation. While we're on this subject, we've been talking about drones all morning. Should drones be regulated?
Well, you have to set a framework for them, and right now the FAA went through and they have 5 different locations they picked to actually start using drones along at the same time. We need to make sure they're secure, because as the world continues to change, and especially from a health perspective, I have an area that's rural and a big part of it out in the desert. A drone can deliver medical products in a much safer mode than somebody in driving, and in a more timely basis.
Yeah.
So there are ways that it can make America safer. We just want to make sure we're protected at the same time. We should not be afraid of it, but we should make sure we have the requirements in that we are safe.
Yeah, especially since people are also talking about their privacy issues around drones, so it comes up.
That is very important what people do. We want to make sure we protect the privacy, but we want to take the traditions of the past but apply them to a changing future. And that's exactly what you need to do. We should not ignore, we should embrace the future, but make sure we protect the privacy as we go forward.
Yeah. Congressman, it's great to have you on the program this morning. Thanks so much.
Thank you. I always enjoy being on your show.
We'll see you soon. Kevin McCarthy joining us there.